this beautiful morning. Thank you, dear God, for not only our rest last night, but for our life this morning, for even simply allowing us to be alive for you. And so, Lord, as we come before you now and continue to worship, going through your word, may your word be a sword that pierces our hearts, that penetrates our minds, that thrusts us forward into action, so that you may be glorified in every aspect of our lives. We praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Morning.
Morning.
Well, we've come to a book here in the Old Testament called Joshua. And so the books before it have a lot of history. You've got Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and now Joshua. So because of that history, I think what we need to do is review a little bit of how we got here. So here's what I'd like for you to do. Stand up. Some of you might remember this from our Word View class, and so I will not ask you to come up. But let me make it a little bit easier for you guys. What we'll do is we're actually going to cover all of the events, at least a summary of the events and the people that lead up to Joshua. So those of you that remember, let's go through some of the actions. So the first action is what? Creation. Alright, so this is creation because God created the heavens and the earth and everything else. And then what's after creation? The fall of man. And then after the fall of man? Flood. So the water's twinkling up, that's where you got the flood. And then what's after the flood? Nations. Because you got the nations coming out. And then after the nations? Abraham. Because God was promising him a multitude equal to the stars. But there was one particular star. What was his name? Isaac. So you grab that star and baby Isaac was born. And then after Isaac? Jacob. Who was Jacob? Jacob was this guy who wrestled with God. And then after Jacob? Joseph. Remember he had this beautiful coat? So that was Joseph. What's after Joseph? Moses. He had the staff. And then after Moses, Passover. So the blood of the lamb. And after the Passover, law. And then after the law, what did they learn from it? They basically learned that they had to build a tabernacle. And then after the tabernacle, offerings and feasts. All this came from the law, right? Okay, after the offerings and feasts, what happened? Counting. What were they counting? They were counting the population, the census, and then they were, what were they spying? They were spying out the land. Okay, and then after the spying, they were wandering. Why were they wandering? They had no faith. They had disobeyed. And so, as a result of the wandering, what happened to the people? They were dying. And after dying, they had a next generation. What happened? The second law. Wait, what's the difference between the second law and the first law? Nothing. Okay. The second law came out because you had the next generation that needed to hear it again. And then after the second law? Joshua, the general. So this is where we are right now. But I want you to remain standing because here's what's interesting. Joshua recognized that God is sovereign. Now, when it comes to God's sovereignty, we will notice in this passage here that there are three characteristics of God in His sovereignty that we're being reminded of. We're being reminded of Him being all-knowing, all-present, and all-powerful. But we actually have to kind of, there are three stages, what would I call them, of really, for me, believing and having faith that God is sovereign in my life. And He's got all of those things. So I think the first part is I'm assuming that we all know and we've heard that God is sovereign, right? Okay, so if you believe that, if you know that, then just remain standing. Remain standing if you accept that it's a fact that God is sovereign. Don't be afraid if you don't accept the fact. Okay, remain standing if you, every day of your life, every second of your life, trust that God is sovereign. That in all of your actions, in all of your thoughts, in all of your attitudes, God has been sovereign. I'll be the first to sit down. Why would I sit down? Why did you sit down? Has there ever been a moment in your life where you failed to recognize God's sovereignty? You might have forgotten about it. You can have a seat. The perfect Christians are in the back. Nah, I'm just joking. The reason why I brought that up is because for us, salvation comes by grace through faith in Christ alone. But that means that we need to be saved from something, right? We needed to be saved from the fact that as sinners, we're destined for death. But as long as we are still on this side of eternity, we're still sinners. Yet we are sinners saved by grace. And even the struggles in our lives, what do they say? They say that the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. It's not talking about the physical, necessarily, side of your walk with God. It's actually the fact that even in this flesh, even in our side until Christ either comes back or brings us home, we're still going to be struggling with it. And I can tell you for a fact that, and I'll confess, it is a daily struggle for me. And I have to always give it up to God on a daily walk, being able to submit myself to Him. Here's what's interesting though. This man, this General Joshua, he was actually a man of God. That after the wanderings and the dyings, I read somewhere that he was actually only one of 2 adults who survived the wanderings of the desert. So I kind of consider him to be what we call a generation 1.5. He had some connection with the previous generation and was very in touch with it, but he has to be in the next generation to be able to continue on and lead the people. What you may have noticed in this story though, and the reason why we have to kind of go back and realize what God has been doing throughout history up until this point, is that God has been doing miraculous and wondrous things in and through His people. And, anywhere from getting them out of Egypt, or even providing for them before they got to Egypt, and then parting of the Red Sea and providing for them manna and whatnot. It was just miracle upon miracle upon miracle. But that was the previous generation. This generation actually needed to experience God for themselves. One of the things that I learned from Dr. Beth Matthews, many of you remember her, she's a communal missionary that came and talked about children who have kind of fallen away from the faith and explaining why. A big part of it is that for some of us we might have forgotten, but when the children get to their 20-year-old stage, they're still trying to make decisions for themselves. They're still developing in their brains that decision-making part, that decision-making aspect. And so if you can just imagine, this generation was probably at that stage. And it's important for us to not freak out when the kids go, is there really a God? What about Buddhism? Hey, Islam looks interesting. Can I get a tattoo, Dad? wait a minute, what are all of these questions that, why are my children asking me about their faith? I thought I raised you as a Christian. I thought I raised you to trust in God. Well, don't take that to offense, because what's happening is they actually need to now come to their own experience with God. And for us as parents, we need to realize that God wants us to walk alongside them. My greatest dream, and I'm seeing it now, is that my own daughters would become my sisters. What do I mean by that? I want them to become my sisters in the Lord. That we would be able to walk alongside each other and grow together. Well, we go through a lot of things in life, and crossing our own Jordans is an analogy that I wanted to talk about this morning, because I've lost count of how many Jordans I've had to cross. And so let me give you a little bit of a picture of what that looks like. When General Joshua was taking his people, you would actually see in chapter 1, God was telling him, chapter 1 and 2, God was telling him, be strong and courageous. And I think I read about 4 times that he said that be strong and courageous. Even one time he said, be strong and very courageous. And then he said, be strong and courageous. But he wasn't telling Joshua to be strong and courageous in his own might. He was telling Joshua to be strong and courageous in the might of the Lord. Remembering and reminding him that God took his people through many circumstances that they should not have gotten out of. That he gave them victories that they should have never won. That he gave them opportunities to pass through that they should have been blocked from. And so he's reminding him to be strong and courageous, and remember that God has promised them this land that's beyond the Jordan. So the general that he is, he decided to go ahead and take his own set of Navy SEALs, because as you read from the story, these are floodwaters going on. And he sent 2 spies from Shittim to Jericho, and they had to cross the river. And looking at this river, you have to realize that it was at its widest, at its deepest, it was at its swiftest in around April, May time frame. And this is basically when the snow in Mount Hermon is starting to melt off, and so you're getting a lot of water coming through. But it was very different back then. As a matter of fact, it was very different even 100 years ago. What you'll find is that the people who consider crossing the river at this time of year by swimming, for them it was a heroic, ancient feat that was a challenge to them. And so this is probably what the spies had to do, is to be able to get through that. Now, when the spies went across and they saw this river, they had to realize that, to give you some numbers here, back in 2010 there was a report that came out about the Jordan River. And at that time they were getting about 30 million cubic meters per year. But 100 years ago, before that, it was getting more than 1.3 billion. So what we're looking at with regards to, if you've ever had a chance to see the Jordan River, it's pretty big, but it's only about 3% of what it was just 100 years ago. And I can't even imagine what it would look like now. Because when you read that passage and it says, overflowing all its banks, it's really not a phrase that is typically used when describing the Jordan River today. But I just want you to imagine, has anyone here ever been whitewater rafting? Alright, so imagine that times 10. Have you ever been on Category 5? Full helmets, suits, and you're going vertical down the falls. That's probably the most terrifying times I've had. So, if you could just imagine that's probably the picture that you can that I want you to put into your minds of just how tumultuous those times were for that. But as you look through this episode of the flood, you'll realize in the story, it was talking about them being in Shittim, and then their target is Jericho. But then remember where the flood started? Not the flood, the river stopped. It started up in a town called Adam, all the way down to the mouth of the Dead Sea. So their target was Jericho, but then it dried up from Adam down to the mouth of the Dead Sea. So just to give you a little bit of a bearing and to understand where, the whole magnitude of this, Jericho is about 18 miles from Adam. So we're at 810 West Lookout Drive. If you were to go up to Home Depot in McKinney, which is near 380, that's where Adam's going to be. Some of you might remember the well, our old house, just north of White Rock Lake. That's where the mouth of the Dead Sea is going to be. So we're looking at about 18 plus 12, maybe about 30 miles. This miracle of 30 miles of dry river occurred in the story that you just heard. And the reason why I wanted Luella to read it like that and have you all see it is to give you more of an impact of just how awesome this act was. Because now they were coming to a point and Joshua is taking on the command of God's people, 2 million people. And they've got this objective of Jericho to get to. But for Joshua, he had to remind himself, and he also needed to remind the people through this, that God is all-knowing. That he would guide them through any territory that they would have. He also needed to remember that God is all-present. That he would lead them through any kind of a time that they might have. Even through the most tumultuous times. And then also remember that God is all-powerful. That he would carry them through any circumstance. And you'll actually see this throughout the entire 3rd chapter of Joshua. So, one of the things that a lot of you have figured out about me is that I'm a planner. If you're telling me to go someplace, I want to be able to figure out, what's the distance, what kind of route are we going to take, and what's our final destination, how many people, and basically get things going. So one of my favorite tools is Google Maps. And so let's go ahead and, you guys want to go someplace? How about if we go to some place uncertain? Is that okay with you? There's actually a town called Uncertain, Texas. So, where are y'all going today? Uncertain. What do you mean? No, uncertain. Uncertain, Texas. So, here's the sign. It's actually Uncertain, Texas. It's 3 hours east of here. So oftentimes we'll actually get into some situations where we're uncertain. We have no idea where we are. But we need to remember, just as God's people did, that he is all-knowing. If we remember that God is all-knowing, then when we don't know what lies ahead, we must have faith that God already knows for us. Let me say that again. When we don't know what lies ahead, we must have faith that God already knows for us. You look at this and you see in verses 3 and 4, he said, giving orders to the people, when you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord and the Levitical priests carrying it, you're going to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go. They have never been here before. But what did they have to see? They had to see the Ark of the Lord their God and the Levitical priest carrying it. From this point forward, God continued to lead his people by means of the Ark. Whereas in the previous generation of the wilderness, it was the cloudy pillar over the Ark that was the focus of the Israelites' attention. Now, the Ark itself became the primary object of their interest. When you read through this and you look at particularly chapters 3 and 4 of Joshua, you'll realize that the author mentions the ark 17 times. This is how important it was for him to emphasize that 17 times you'll read it. And it was actually the visible symbol that God himself was leading his people into the land and against their enemies. It was the visible symbol that God himself. It wasn't just some help that he sent. It wasn't just some angel. It wasn't just some force of nature that God sent. God himself was the one that was taking care of the people. So the people, as you'll notice, it said that they were to keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits. That's about a little bit over half a mile. So to give you another bearing, anyone ever walked or driven to UTD? If you haven't, I want to encourage you, because that's our Jerusalem, our Judea Samaria right there. It is literally 0.51 miles from our front door. So that should give you an idea. The people of God were to stay half a mile, 2,000 cubits from the ark itself. So if you can imagine, if you were the people of God, where would the ark be? It would be at UTD. Now, why is this important? It needed to be 2,000 cubits more than half a mile, because there were about 2 million people in the crowd. 2 million people. That's basically, Dallas population right now is about 1.2 billion. So double the Dallas population minus a little bit, that's the number of people that you're traveling with. So can you imagine? You're traveling with a population of Dallas and then some, and you're trying to find this ark somewhere, but you're not going to be able to find it in the midst of all the people. It needs to be 2,000 cubits away from you so that you know where it's going to be. Because a mob of 2,000 people are not going to get directed by one little box in the middle of that crowd. One of the things that was said about it is that the ark was carried in front of the people, not so much to show the road, but as to make a road. It wasn't there to light up the road. It was actually there to open up and make the road for them, make the path for them to be able to go through by dividing the waters of the Jordan. And the people were actually to keep that distance from them so that they wouldn't lose sight of the ark, but keep their eyes fixed upon it. They had to keep their eyes fixed upon the symbol that was to represent God himself, God being in their midst. And they would know the road by looking at the Ark of the Covenant, by which the road had been made. So, for example, they would know and observe how the Lord was leading them to Canaan by a way that they had never traversed before. And this was the miracle. It's when we don't know what lies ahead that we actually have to have that faith that God already knows. And this is what the people of Israel were showing. They also talked about in verse 5, consecrate yourselves. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. The people's self-consecration consisted of turning their hearts to God and really getting their attitudes and their actions right before him. Did you know that every time something big happens in a believer's life, it is so crucial for us to get our actions and our attitudes right before him. It is so important for us to consecrate ourselves before him so that he can accomplish his will in our lives. That's what Joshua was telling them to do, that they needed to consecrate themselves and prepare themselves. Because God had previously promised to do wonders, awesome miracles just upon their entering the land. And sure enough, most of these people had actually been looking forward to seeing these miracles in view of maybe some of the stories that their parents had told them, or even early memories that they might have had during childhood. But now they're adults, and they're 20-somethings, and they're teenagers, and they're going, man, I can't wait to see what God's going to be doing for us. So I need to go ahead and fix my eyes upon this Ark of the Covenant that God has set before us, so that we can see what God has planned for us next. So when we don't know what lies ahead, we must have faith that God already knows for us. And that's what we see with the people of God here. I was thinking about friends, and for some reason Facebook popped up, and I thought, okay, how many contacts, how many connections do people make? And so what better person than to kind of look up is Mark Zuckerberg himself. And he doesn't have friends, he's got followers. Anybody know how many followers he has? He's got more than 92, almost 93 million followers. What I've noticed though about people who have a lot of quote-unquote friends is that many times they tend to be the loneliest people. I don't know about you, but I've gone through many times in my life where I thought all the people around me would be supportive, but yet I might have actually felt like this person, just alone in the middle of things. But those are the most crucial times in which God reminds us that He is all present. It's when we're not sure of whom we can depend on that we must have faith that God will be there. When we're not sure of whom we can depend on, we must have faith that God will be there. In verse 10 he says, "This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that He will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites." These people in those days, those were fierce warriors. These were walled cities. These were impenetrable forces. These were some of the strongest armies that you could ever come across. These were people that you did not want to mess with. But yet, when we look at the miraculous parting of the Jordan, it was really only the beginning of a series of miracles that would demonstrate to the Israelites God's presence. You know, God was indeed among them. He was still acting on their behalf, but now He began working through this guy named Joshua, just to really give them all of these miraculous victories that they never would have even imagined. And evidently, the pushing back, just imagine, the pushing back of the waters of the Jordan, in a sense for them, symbolized the pushing back of their enemies. If God can separate and push back the waters of this tumultuous river, 30 miles wide in expanse, what more could He do with these mere people that He has set before them? So the title that we see in verse 11, the Lord of all the earth, here's what I want you to know. I want you to circle that, highlight, underline, whatever. The Lord of all the earth. Verse 11. It actually occurs here for the first time in Scripture, indicating Yahweh's absolute sovereignty over this planet. Because He was Lord of the earth, which also meant its owner, He could give Canaan to the Israelites. So, do you and I truly believe that He is Lord of all the earth? Let me ask you a question. If we truly believe that God is all present, what are some things that make us forget that He is everywhere all the time? Ponder that again. If we truly believe that God is all present, what are some things that make us forget that He is everywhere all the time? You know, even His own apostle, Jesus' apostle, forgot that He was there. Peter, the man himself who saw Jesus on the shore as they were in the boat, and was crying out and took off his clothes and ran out to him, running on water. Knew that Jesus was there, but then all of a sudden, in the midst of the waves and the winds coming up around him, he lost his focus and started sinking. But the beauty of that story is that Jesus reached out and grabbed him. But he still knew God was there. He still knew that Jesus was right there, and yet he was sinking. It happens to every one of us. We know it, but we tend to get distracted by the winds and the tides that come up all around us. But we need to remember that God is omnipresent. So we need to have faith that he will be there, even when we're not sure of whom or what we can depend on. I was looking at other picture illustrations, and so Kayla was with me. She said, "Oh, that's such a cute little snail." And I'm thinking, yeah, well, some of the people might think of icky if they saw this. And then she said, oh no, poor little snail. It's got to cross that road. And I like this illustration because I'm pretty sure you've been like me at times, feeling like that snail, and then you're going, how in the world am I going to cross this road? I'm way too slow, and ooh, are those cracked shells I see ahead of me? I don't think people made it across this road. And so I can relate to the snail too many times, because I know that I've got a certain objective I've got to get to, but then you start seeing all the traffic on 635 and there's just no way you can get across. And we look at that, and I'm actually kind of reminded, and I looked at some of the signs that were even around my old house in Dallas. One of them said, "When flooded, turn around, don't drown." For me, if God tells me to go someplace, and then I see this Jordan in front of me, I'll pay attention to that sign and be like, okay, never mind, I'm gone, I'm out of here. Because there's just no way that I can get through this. Let me tell you a personal story. It's funny because I was trying to figure out some illustrations to show you just how big this massive miracle was, all the way from 380 down to White Rock Lake. And I realized it wasn't an accident that God reminded me about that house, because it was around that same time that I knew God was calling me to the ministry, but I told God, and remember I'm a planner, right? So I said, okay God, got this house, I need to pay it off real soon, shouldn't be too bad, should be able to do it by next year, making a good salary, but I know DTS is expensive, so let me save up for it. I'd like to be able to pay off this house and buy another house, so I can rent this off, and maybe buy another car, and if you give me a family, then I'll need to save up for tuition for 2.5 kids, and oh, by the way, if you want to give me a helpmate, then, you know, I'll take her too. And I said, but, you know, God does a 10-year plan. And God said, oh, that's a wonderful plan. Okay, here's your helpmate, because the helpmate that your church thinks you should have is not the same character that I'm looking for. So he gave me beautiful Tina. But at a time when I thought, oh my goodness, my life is starting to turn upside down, God was actually turning it right side up. Because that 10-year plan that I said to God, it turned into a 1-year plan. And part of that 1-year plan was to answer her prayer that, Lord, if this truly is the man for me, then take away everything from him. This is why I tell the guys, you better lead your wives in prayer, because you're going to be surprised when something happens and you have no idea what just did. But God answered her prayer to the point where we had to sell the house, and basically I had to give up everything, clean my 401k and whatnot. And God had to bring me to a point of depending on him. So we had to sell the house, and I didn't tell anybody yet, but we were about to. But the funny thing is, we prayed about it the next day. Actually, no, it was that night. That night, one of my buddies from Arkansas called. He said, "Hey, we got some friends that are wanting to move back to Texas. You know of any houses?" I'm like, yeah. So, when do they come? We're like, oh, they're coming this weekend. Friday? Yeah, tomorrow. Oh, okay. So they came the next day, checked out our house. You know, we're just kind of like, okay, we'll see before we got it listed on the market. And then as we prayed through and we realized that they were believers, they made an offer. And they actually made an offer more than what we were expecting to list. And what was interesting was when they found out that we were believers and we were transitioning into what I call vocational ministry. I don't call it full-time ministry because we should all be full-time ministry. But I call it vocational ministry because I was leaving the corporate world, and they called back and they said, you know what, we feel led by the Lord, we should give you a little bit more. And Tina and I are like, okay. So for me at that time, I had no idea what we were going to do next. To me, that was my Jordan. Of course, Tina's like, oh, we're okay, we're fine. We just got married, we got trees now, and I'm freaking out going, I don't know what to do. But in that Jordan, God just basically parted the waters for us. He dried up the riverbeds and said, you can pass. And here we are. Continuing on. So, knowing that God is all-powerful, when we come across an impossible task, we must have faith that God will get us through it. Joshua 3:15 states that the Jordan was at flood stage, as it remained so throughout the time of the harvest. So this meant that the water was very high, nearly overflowing the banks and moving rapidly. The Jordan River in this condition was deep and the water fast, and crossing on foot was nearly impossible and very dangerous. It actually would have been unthinkable for the young and for the elderly. Is Mike here? How about Francis? If I were Mike or Francis, there is no way that I would let my wife and baby in that river. But that's what the people were realizing that they had to do. How in the world would I get my family through this river? As the Ark of the Covenant and the priests carrying it touched the fast-moving, flood-high waters of that Jordan River, God provided a miracle that would have actually been visible to everyone in the region. Now, here's the thing. It wasn't just a miracle that was visible to the 2 million Israelites. It was a miracle that was visible to all of their enemies. If you go back and read through chapters 1 and 2 again, when Joshua sent the spies and they met Rahab, you know what they found out? They found out that the people were terrified. That they had heard of this force of God, God's people coming through and annihilating everything. And they were just fearful and afraid. I don't know about you, but if I were those people, I'd be kind of going, now we got the Jordan River, it'll slow them down. Can you imagine those people that all of a sudden from McKinney all the way down to Dallas, whoa, where did the river go? And then you see these 2 million people coming across. You know you're in trouble. Except for Rahab, because she believed in God. She was actually an Old Testament example of what it meant to have faith and exercise it in a God who was so powerful that there was never an impossible task for him to come across. So as we realize that an example here has been presented to us in the context of God's people, even right before they hit Jericho. I mean, we had this song earlier, we were saying that the walls would come down. That's gonna come later. But before all of that, God was working through all of this. And in your bulletins, you'll actually see a quote there. And it says, duty often calls us to take one step without knowing how we shall take the next. Have you ever been in a situation where God says, I want you to go here, and then you're suddenly going, yeah, but God, there's a chasm that there's no way that I can get across. And so when it comes to our own personal Jordans, we often come across that. But we also have to realize that if we've been brought this far by the leading of God, by the leadings of providence, and while engaged in His service, while obeying Him, while following Him, while taking His lead, then we should be able to safely leave the whole event to Him. And the whole event for the nation of Israel was to receive the promised land. These were just little things that they had to come across. Even though for us we would think they're huge. But in the big picture of things, these were all just little things. So as you cross your personal Jordan, I want us to remember these things. In unfamiliar territory, and you'll actually be able to fill this out in your bulletins. In unfamiliar territory, God guides you as you follow Him. Oftentimes, we will come across situations in our lives where we have no idea how we got there. We have no idea where to go next. We have no idea what's before us. But yet, you can always depend on God to guide you as you follow Him. Following Him means that you will to look at the symbolism of the nation of Israel following the Ark of the Covenant. That means that you're not just going to go and say, okay, this is like a divining rod. No. This is actually something in which you get into and passionately and intimately understand God so that He can lead you and guide you as you follow Him through His Word. Because in any unfamiliar territory that He brings us, His Word will prevail. In uncertain times, God leads you as you seek Him. Sometimes we'll get into situations and we have no idea what's going to happen next. I can tell you this. Being a planner, I always think like, oh, okay, I've got these budgets and we're all set. But I come to the end of the year and I'm going, how in the world do we just get through that year? Somehow God provided. But here's the thing. It's most crucial during those uncertain times that you actually seek God. Because without seeking Him, there's no way that He can lead you. It's important that He would actually be the one to take us through these things. Because we have no idea what's going to happen next. And then in unmanageable circumstances, God carries you as you trust Him. There have been so many circumstances in my life, and I'm sure that there have been so many circumstances in yours, in which you can probably relate to this and know that it was only by the grace of God that you're able to get carried through that. If you haven't experienced that yet, I want to encourage you. Try it. Try trusting Him. If you don't know how to trust Him, do it together as the body of Christ. Ask another believer, how can I trust Him through all of this? You know, the major emphasis in chapter 3 is on the great miracle that God performed to lead the Israelites into the land of promise. It's the conquest of a land that will continue to be accompanied by God's miraculous works for His people, all of which they were to remember and appreciate. We read stories to our children earlier. These are stories. They're true stories. They're wonderful stories. But God's story continues on in their lives and in our lives. In very intimate and specific ways. He gives each and every one of us a Jordan that we need to cross so that he can be glorified, so that we can follow him, so that we can seek him, so that we can trust him. You know, crossing the Jordan into the land of Canaan was a major turning point as far as the faith of the Israelites was concerned. To slip away into the wilderness of Sinai by crossing the Red Sea, it actually required some faith. However, to invade the land of Canaan by crossing the Jordan River took a great deal more faith. You know why? Here's what happened. Having once crossed the river, this was a huge deal. Okay, we're going to cross the river, and here we are. We're on the other side. Once they cross the river, what happens to it? It began flowing. You'll see that in chapter 4. All of a sudden, they see this great force ahead of them. There's no way that they can turn back anymore. So their faith had to continue on, because no more turning back. But yet, there's the promised land. They've set foot in it. All they had to do was continue to trust God in the midst of it. Some people might think that that's kind of like being between a rock and a hard place. But for me, it's just continuing saga of God's sovereignty in our lives. So, as you cross your personal Jordans, I want to encourage us to remind each other, because here's the thing. The entire nation took this step together in complete commitment to God. It was the entire nation, and they took this step together. It was the 2 million plus of them together in complete commitment to God, because there was no turning back. So what more for the couple hundred of us here at the Biblical Community Church? Can you and I take this step together to follow him so that he can guide us through unfamiliar territory, to seek him so that he can lead us through uncertain times, to trust him so that he can carry us through unmanageable circumstances? I plead with you, because I can't do this by myself, and neither can you. This is something that we need to be able to do together, by the strength and the might and the power of our Lord God. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time together. We thank you, dear God, for your word. We thank you, dear God, that it is truth. Truth to realize that you have been working from the beginning of time to bless your people so that you would be glorified, to fulfill your promises, especially knowing that what we have to do is take that first, second, 50th step of faith in our lives. Father, I thank you for each and every one of these, my brothers and sisters, whom you have brought here into this worship sanctuary together this day. Help us, oh God, to be reminded of your sovereignty in our lives, that as we follow you, you will guide us through territories that we have no idea how to get through. That you would lead us as we seek you through times that we haven't the faintest clue of how to get through. That you would carry us as we trust you through circumstances that are just impossible. And so, Lord, I pray that as the Biblical Community Church, that as the body of Christ, we would be able to come together and set aside all things that keep us from being united. That we would set aside all things that would not give us the strength to follow you. but that we would always be an encouragement to one another. And so, Lord God, we thank you for this example of the River Jordan. And we pray that as we come across various Jordans in our lives, we would be able to do all of this together.